The most intensive part of this course begins with Module 4 and looking at the incident command system and the working dynamics therein. It introduces you to how the environmental unit fits within marine incidents management using the nationally and internationally proven incident command system. It addresses the many dynamics within, such as formal and informal communications, particularly with operations. Introduces you to technical specialists, the incident command system operation periods, also how to avoid working in silos. Instead, organize as task-specific working groups. It really emphasizes the importance of fostering a social contract based on promises and agreements and more. Module 4 examines aspects of the incident command system and when, where, and how the environmental unit members engage. This engagement is through collaboration and coordination. It is very dynamic and important to foster trust and confidence throughout the management of a marine incident. As explained, the environmental unit is conducted under the incident command system, particularly in Canada and the United States. Within the dynamics of an environmental emergency, the environmental unit members bring planning to the incident management team so they can develop response objectives and strategies based on actual analysis and field observations of the marine incident. Let's take a look at the definition of the incident command system. The incident command system, known by its acronym ICS, is a standardized incident management organization deployed at the site of an incident to directly supervise field operations. The site in this case is an incident command post. And if we look over to the organization chart, it shows the types of branches and positions therein, including the environmental unit under the planning section. It's an organization that provides a common framework within which people can work together effectively. These people may be drawn from multiple agencies, contractors, industries, and First Nations that do not routinely work together. You may not have ever met them before. Both the incident command system and the environmental unit therein are initiated when an incident commander has become engaged and begins to establish an incident management organization and team, a set of incident objectives that determines response direction expectations, and an incident action plan along with an operational period to establish daily work assignments such as for operations. Essentially, the ICS begins with an incident commander and the environmental unit begins with planning. For a large marine incident that impacts or threatens more than one jurisdiction, meaning a federal, provincial, local, and First Nations government, the environmental unit functions under an unified command, known by its acronym UC, as a single integrated response team co-located in an incident command post. Let's look at Unified Command's mission. Unified Command's mission is accomplished without abrogating agencies, corporations' legal responsibilities or mandates, and/or a First Nations rights and titles. This integration approach and stipulation also applies to environmental unit representatives assigned by their respective incident commanders residing in Unified Command. Why is this the case? Well, the essence of an environmental emergency is that no single jurisdiction owns or manages the many diverse coastal values threatened or impacted. It's a shared responsibility among stewards of natural and cultural resources. Building on the message that an environmental emergency, such as a marine incident, is a shared responsibility amongst the stewards or trustees of the coastal resources. The environmental unit was developed in recognition that ecological, cultural, and social and other matters need to be assessed, measured, and balanced during an environmental emergency. As this is so important to make sure that it's equitable, transparent, the representation in the environmental unit should match those of Unified Command for personnel accountability and direction. The environment unit can have a diversity of participants from different lifestyles and work backgrounds. With this diversity comes different perspectives, communication styles, and expectations. When working in the environmental unit, it's important to park your authorities and work towards a common understanding of what needs to be done. Working in the environmental unit is really a relationship and trust building opportunity. Gardening and then maintaining a positive relationship and trust during and after a marine incident are actually performance measures in which the environmental unit plays a very important role. Non-government organizations, whether industry, social, or environmental, can have a role in a marine incident by offering technical or operational services. However, an NGO is generally not part of an environmental unit. If an NGO wishes to be engaged, it must be invited and be made accountable to a member of Unified Command in its performance, accountability, and terms of engagement, such as handling social media and information provided within the incident command post. When a non-government organization only needs to know about the particulars of a marine incident or has a minor inquiries or services, the alternative arrangement is through a liaison officer or an information officer. A legacy of a major marine incident, such as an oil spill, is not necessarily lingering ecological impacts, but a torn social fabric of coastal communities within the impact region. Marine coastal environments can often repair itself faster and fuller than social cultural harm. To avoid social cultural harm, the 3 C's of the environmental unit processes amongst representatives and their stakeholders are collaboration, coordination, and consensus. The EU's decisions can be difficult, resulting in trade-off as one seeks common ground on levels of environmental protection and costs. The process is as important as the decision made. The process must be inclusive, transparent, and fair. Essentially, the environmental unit often fosters a social contract, a promise, and an agreement. Let's take a look at this further with an example. Environmental unit recommendations made to Unified Command and then forwarded to operations are essentially founded on a promise and agreement pertaining to impact mitigation. An example would be oiled shoreline assessment. Collaboration is typically undertaken by the environmental unit's shoreline cleanup assessment team that are standing on an oiled shore, not at the incident command post. The 2 primary decisions are 1. To treat, or 2. Leave to natural recovery. Say the consensus was for ambient water deluge flushing just to lift and recover the bulk fresh oil that has penetrated into some pebble sediments. Flushing would then cease when the black and oily water became, say, a rainbow sheen. That is now an agreed on endpoint. It was also agreed that operations will not stage equipment upland, as there's an abandoned First Nations village there. Though this oiling assessment had technical and scientific experience elements, such as wave exposure or a proven method, these decisions were a broker deal, a promise that should be kept. It is only Unified Command that can make changes to the environmental unit recommendations. As well, operations, when they're provided directions in their work assignments on this oiled shore, they should abide and comply. At the onset of a marine incident, how would the environmental unit know what their tasks and deliverables will be? Well, the first step would be to look at the operations section's organization and what branches are established therein. For each branch that is established, there requires an incident-specific plan. A typical types of branches for a marine incident would be a protection and recovery branch that deals with removing pollution such as oil off water, a wildlife rescue branch, a waste disposal branch, a salvage branch to deal with maybe the vessel casualty itself. Again, each one of these branches typically needs an incident-specific plan in which the environmental unit collaborates with the operations branch directors to develop, generally as working groups, which we examined further on. The Environment Unit is managed by an Environmental Unit Leader, known by its acronym EUL, which is assigned by the Planning Section Chief. The leader is generally a natural resource or trustee agency of government, be it federal, provincial, or First Nations. However, the environment unit leader needs to be very versed in ICS, the environmental unit mission, very experienced and competent. This is because the position demands a lot of leadership insofar as helps members to reach consensus, motivates them to be engaged, briefs planning and operations chiefs on issues and concerns, engages unified command in environmental unit processes and products, evaluates target cleanup endpoints, such as determining what level of treatment is required on oiled shores, recommends termination and mitigation actions if causing too much ecological or cultural damage. Organization skills are not as important as these leadership ones, as the EU is not run like a committee but by self-organizing groups. The environmental unit leader can be very busy. For a large, complex incident, the environment unit leader can be engaged in briefing and issue resolutions as per the operational period task and schedules. As such, a deputy environmental unit leader can be established that stays within the unit to continue on with coordination and communication with the working groups. Environmental unit members are mostly technical specialists, a term used in command systems. These specialists can be in spill trajectory, historical cultural resources, wildlife response, weather, waste management, resources at risk, aerial spill observers, pollution sampling, and several others. Those environmental unit members that reside in impact areas, such as the First Nations, and that have extensive local knowledge about natural and cultural resources, navigational hazards, access routes are, in their own right, technical specialists. There are operational guidelines that provide standardized mission and tasks for technical specialists. Populating the environmental unit is one of the first steps taken by the planning section chief and an assigned environmental unit leader. The technical specialists can be sourced from anywhere, locally to internationally, depending on the need and specialty. Generally, many of them would be hired by the responsive party, whereas others will arrive from a provincial or federal agency as well as locally from a First Nations. These people are then reimbursed through cost recovery from the responsible party or its compensation programs. This is based on the polluter pay principle. Having some scripted job descriptions, such as in guidelines, helps in sourcing and communicating what service is needed. The environment unit has both field and site tasks, and there's a relationship between these two places. Field is where the incident occurs and tactical operations is undertaken. Site is where the incident command post resides and the incident management team therein, which is operating under the incident command system. The site is also where the environmental unit resides. It's undertaking coordination, data management, and working according to an operational period. Whereas in the field, this is where members of the environmental unit could become field observers, undertaking assessments, liaisoning with operations, and monitoring performance. The objective really is to link field and site together by creating a common operational picture, by bringing in field situation information and taking all that information and through going through operations unified command, determine tactical directions. Within the planning section, the environmental unit and situation unit often have similar, if not overlapping, roles to create a common operational picture for the incident management team. Close coordination between these two unit leaders is required. Example is the situation unit gathers field observations and posts them on a situation board for the incident management team. Much of the posted information is provided by the environmental unit. It's important not to try to overlap roles. A mission of the environmental unit is to get ahead of operations through planning, which includes making recommendations attached to work assignments and incident-specific plans for the branches, such as a wildlife branch, a salvage branch, or on-water oil recovery branch. To get in front requires leveraging both formal and informal avenues of communications between operations and environmental unit personnel. The formal is the reporting and meeting and issues referred to as the chain of command under the ICS system. The informal is just walking across the room to meet and greet, explain, and collaborate. So be dynamic, inclusive, and collaborative. Don't work in silos. To foster collaboration between operations and planning, it's important to break down silos in the ICS when responders just gather in their respective section. There are simple ways to foster collaborations, such as amongst operations and the EU. For example, logistics can lay out a command post and its situation board that forces people to cross paths and communicate. Take a look at the model layout for an incident command post. You'll see that operations section and the planning section are working side by side in the same room, and they also share a situation board or incident status display board. Look to the right and you see that the display board also forces people to come together and communicate. Example would be operational specific information will be on the left side of the situation board, such as operations map showing their divisions and their assignments. In the middle would be common information that the whole incident management team would get access to, such as weather or the incident action plans. And to the right could be planning specific information like oil sensitivity maps or oil trajectory maps, and they would be posted there. This brings people together. It builds a common operation picture and makes sure everybody is working according to the same information. The environmental unit is not managed like a committee with a chairperson and an agenda and everybody is around a single table. The environmental unit is better organized as work groups that includes operations personnel such as a branch director or a designate with a specific mission such as developing a wildlife rescue plan. In doing so, it's important to have some disciplined organization process such as identify your work group, some signage, and establish a designated location. Inform the environmental unit where you're located, if not within the planning section. Wear your ICS vest with your environmental unit and your technical specialist role, identified as labels on it. Remember to report back to the environmental unit and to meet the operational period's timelines for briefings and products. It's important for the environmental unit members to understand what operational divisions are all about. Almost all the forms that you work with will have a division identifier on it, such as the Division A for Vessel Casualty Site, Division C for On-Water Response Area, Division B for Shoreline Clean Area, as shown by the graphics. As well, any field observers, such as those that are doing shoreline cleanup assessment techniques, will inevitably cross paths with a division supervisor. The division supervisor is the meat between the sandwich between operations in the incident command post and what's happening out in the field. This is how it works. A widespread marine incident, such as an oil spill, may be separated into geographical areas called divisions to focus both planning and tactics on specific aspects of an incident's management, such as I just discussed. There may be many divisions, such as dedicated to the marine casualty site for salvage, open water for pollution containment and recovery, and for shoreline cleanup. Each division has a supervisor that reports to the branch director. As such, it's important for environmental personnel to foster a positive and cooperative relationship with division supervisors and their branch members if preparing plans or engaging them in the field. The environmental unit members should also understand what operational groups are all about. There are also groups of responders that will not be assigned to a specific area, but instead fulfill a function such as wildlife rescue or undertaking waste management. They service the entire marine incident impact area. Each group also has a supervisor that reports to their branch director. Get to know them. Again, message is environmental personnel need to foster a positive and cooperative relationship with group supervisors and their branch members, particularly if they're preparing plans or engaging them in the field. As the environmental unit members are working within the ICS process and organization, it's important they actually have incident command system training, at least up to the ICS 300 intermediate level. Environmental members undertake analysis on such as pollution directories, fate, and behavior, provide forecasts such as on weather and sea conditions, gather field data from aerial observations and shoreline assessments. This gathered, analyzed, and packaged information supports the daily incident action plan, creates a common operational picture, and guides operations tactical assignments. Essentially, the environmental unit's deliverables reflect and support incident management objectives. There's a lot of work to be done in a systematic way on an incident command system. The environmental unit functions in accordance with an operational period, a planning process, which is a scheduled sequence of tasks, deliverables, and meetings, generally over a 24-hour period. The operational period is about preparing for the next day's work. Take a look at the graphics to the right. You can see all the different meetings and products and assignments that need to be done on a daily basis. The environmental unit's technical analyses, field data collection, data management, and its presentations must all meet the timelines of an operational period. It is a performance measure. The environmental unit works according to a decision-making framework of the incident command system. It's therefore important to know this framework so as to where to focus your efforts. Emergency response decisions are framed as objectives, specified response outcomes defined by the Incident Management's Unified Command. It reflects the process of management by objectives. Strategies, framework of measures that can be used to carry out the response objectives based on a common operational picture. Tactics are operational actions to carry out the most relevant aspects of a strategy. In essence, the ICS decision process is to differentiate between wishful thinking and reality. The environmental unit's contribution is providing technical analysis, field information, local knowledge, and a consensus on where, when, and how to manage a marine incident within this decision-making framework. Let's explore this a little bit further. Response objectives are probably one of the first things that Unified Command provides. It determines the direction of the response efforts. These response objectives show up on the incident action plans. They're always spoken to during meetings and briefings under the operational period. Let's take a look at these response objectives. First, they must be measurable and achievable. They are written as actions, such as prevent oil from reaching shores. That would be the mission of on-water operations. Remove oil from shores without causing more harm by proven and reasonable measures. That would be the mission of the environmental unit's shoreline claim assessment team and onshore operations. Rescue and rehabilitate oil birds. That would be the mission of a wildlife rescue center. That's the wish. These are the management by objectives is the cornerstone and the framework for all the response efforts of an incident management team, including that of the environmental unit. They are really a constant reminder of what direction emergency management is heading. As a marine incident unfolds and you gather more information about it during the initial response phase and later into the planning phases of incident management, strategies can be developed. Strategies are operational framework designed to achieve response objectives. Initial spill conditions such as observed from shoreline or aerial observation reconnaissance play a large role in developing effective strategies. As information is gathered, strategies can be developed and revised to protect coastal resources at risk. Reality is setting in. Strategies are based on prior known and real-time information gathered in the field, then evaluated and agreed on within Unified Command as presented by the environmental unit operations in the various operational period meetings and briefings. Here's an example. When it comes to an old shore, The strategies are collectively decisions regarding whether or not to treat, undertake manual removal, mechanical removal, undertake ambient water flushing, oil sediment relocation, or any combination of these measures. Collectively, this provides for a framework in which to determine what response would be most suitable. Based on the strategy as a framework, one has to pick the best tactic out of that framework. Considered are things like logistics. How many people do you have? How many vessels do you have? Is the weather suitable enough to get there? The reality is starting to set in here. Tactics are site and situation specific measures. They can include details on where to go, what equipment, what to do, and size of a workforce, length and types of booms, salvage equipment, and more. Tactical details, such as equipment type and specifications, are largely left to operations. In essence, environmental members essentially work between strategies and tactics to meet the management by objectives defined by unified command. This module on the incident command system and the working dynamics of the environmental unit is complex. That's because the incident command system is quite complex, as well as the work that needs to be done by the environmental unit. So let's have a little bit of a summary here. The module shows that environmental unit is important and dynamic in its delivery insofar as works within the incident command system when it's invoked and under the planning section, functions with multiple jurisdictions as governments as well as a responsible party, supports unified command response objectives, and reflects the process of management by objectives, provides the planning function for unified command as well as operations according to branches and groups established to meet the challenges of a marine incident. It's undertaken without breaking laws and regulations, but instead provides conditions to mitigation measures. Embraces a diversity of people with different experiences, skills, and perspectives, so requires patience. Often an opportunity to foster trust and confidence in the management of a marine incident when it's felt to be transparent and equitable and inclusive. Leadership is provided by an environmental unit leader from a natural resource trustee government that can include a First Nation. Capabilities from technical specialists. They're mostly hired by the responsible party, but can be sourced locally. Local knowledge is a technical specialty. There is a field component to command post function required to foster a common operational picture, evaluate, assess, and monitor on behalf of the incident management team. Formal and informal communications and establishing work groups helps break down ICS silos to promote collaboration. It functions under the meetings, schedules, and deliverables in an operational period, which is an environmental unit performance measure to make sure that this is done in a timely way.